Keep on rolling, partners. And OBS has to warn me every fucking time that there's no video, but we don't do that here, and we don't give a shit. All right, evening everybody. This is Matt with RTS as usual. I still don't fucking know what that was supposed to stand for. I want to say kind of like we were discussing earlier, and I ended up being basically spot on. Um, I think it was real talk shit, but like I can't remember if we ever discussed this or wrote it down, or it's just sort of going to be whatever it's going to be. Um, yeah, so this is the third installment, Evan, the crown jewel of our trilogy, or the worst one by far. It's really we have one of two avenues to traverse at
Yeah,
this point,
yeah,
right? We have
it's actually going to be a completely different story than the first two because we realized we're actually out of ideas. So
right. Well, that's why we waited a
That makes
month
sense.
in
Yeah.
between recording. Yeah, we got Tom with us. I think everyone listening to this at this point is probably familiar with our main operation, Broken Gears Airsoft. We used to do obviously our live streams and are doing some more fully finished content here on the channel at that point. I say here on the channel because this will be uploaded for now to the channel and eventually our own podcast feed because this, unlike our other operation, will never really have like a live or video component. Um, yeah, so I guess what we are discussing tonight is, I said, more of the things that we are doing to narrowly or otherwise avoid myriad mental health crises in the form of what else we are up to as usual. What we are up to as usual, rather. And Evan, you have a bit of a grievance to get aired and get into, and hopefully spawn some other discussions. I'm quite interested in getting underway with. Do you want to tell everybody what it is? It's awfully specific, but as I said, it can
Much like
branch out.
Festivus,
Yeah,
we start the podcast with an airing of
yes,
grievances.
airing of
absolutely, absolutely,
grievances.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was just reading, or I was just trying out the demo for Microprose's Regiments,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like Wargame Red Dragon, but less
Less so.
complete, but less absolute micromanagement of every single aspect of the game. Um, and for whatever reason, I wanted to look up some of the like the hotkeys and stuff, and it there was a link to a quote unquote manual that looked like somebody had thrown together in uh, you know Acrobat or Corel Paint or whatever second tier document making program you wanna choose.
Right.
But it just reminded me of, I mean, they might have been gone by the time you guys were kind of getting into gaming, but I remember when I was a kid, especially LucasArts, used to make absolute banger game manuals
Yeah.
Oh,
for their
100%.
games.
Now, in complete fairness, you know who didn't make complete banger instruction manuals back in the 90s? Microprose. So I guess that's just a continuation of the trend. Because I was going to make the joke like, wait a minute, hold on. A poorly documented Microprose game? Say it ain't so.
Yeah,
But
man,
but
but
your point definitely stands. Yeah,
at least they tried,
fair.
back in the day, and
And figure you look at the manual that you were just looking at, and it's like that was probably acceptable back in the 90s. Not beautiful, but
Did the
doable.
job. Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah, and I mean, like I'm looking at a Falcon 4.01 from probably the early 2000s, and it still looks better than 99% of any manuals that even exist for modern games. And I think a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, they just do tutorials now," and
No, tons of
yeah,
those
that's
suck too, and
that's
games stay in early access for 3.5 years, and then the devs forget to finish the tutorials, and we have the exact issue to be solved by something like basic documentation on how to play your stupid ass game.
well, and like back in the
I'm talking like
day,
a generic new title, by the way, not regiments,
yeah,
not
no, no,
nothing
no, no.
particular.
Back in the day, though, the manual, especially with like LucasArts stuff, was the equivalent of like the $200 special maximum steel case edition of any modern game. Like I
Yeah,
remember there was one game, Maniac Mansion, where all the main characters are college students. So LucasArts did like this entire fake, um, like corkboard. from the college that these kids supposedly went to, with just like all these little funny in jokes and stuff, and their copyright protection was always awesome. It was always like a cipher wheel, but the art for it was always really cool. Um, and it actually gave you like information on how to play the game. And now it's every game manual, like I said, even if there is one, it's just so freaking basic. And I don't know, it just I saw that MicroProse manual and I was like, this is fucking bullshit. I hate this. Why is everything garbage? Anything you have to read now is like absolute bare minimum, lowest attention span threshold possible.
Grammatical errors.
Just for a laugh, I'm going through uh like one of my, and I remember this being a good manual, but the manual for Half-Life, the OG Half-Life manual.
Hmm.
And you go to the fucking back of that book, and I shit you not, they have an instruction manual, or like at least like a brief like tutorial on how to use God, not the world, God, what was their world editor called? Not the SDK. It had a very
World
specific name.
Worldcraft 2.0.
Worldcraft 2. Yeah, that was it. And yeah, I'm just like looking at the photos of that and being like, holy cow, they even, and that was like a serious level editor. I mean, like, that was not like, that was like game dev tools
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
teaching you how to use in the back of these manuals. That's crazy.
Well, it talks about like all the different enemy types that you're gonna run into, and some of the weapons you'll have, and there's like all the backgrounds or concept art from the game.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, dude, it's just they used to, in
Care
in
about
the
these
in the
things. Yeah.
words that are very popular today, we used to be a proper country,
Right. Right.
and we made game manuals that were more than like 2 seconds worth of effort.
I do appreciate. I mean, that being said, like there are some tutorials are complete dog shit, but I mean, like there
Mhm.
are some standouts out there. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
the like the Halo Combat Evolved tutorial is fucking fantastic because it's like it's an in-world, and not just like a generic like in-world, like, oh, you just get to play like a really easy level where they're giving you all the keybinds, where it's like you atmospherically are pulling yourself out of a suspended animation tank and need to like reset your systems, which is kind of neat. I can appreciate those stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I don't think it has to be a mutually exclusive thing either.
No,
Like
I just
you
think it's
could.
the enshittification overall of like the tutorial slash manual experience. Because the shitty manual sucks as much as the shitty tutorial. It's just like nobody puts any love or effort into their tutorials
Yeah, and
or their manuals anymore.
that's really where this is going. Is it's like everything manual wise has been pushed off to fan run wikis
Mm-hmm.
or something similar, and I've just got it's like Bethesda. Bethesda's like the notorious example of, oh well,
110%.
we're gonna release this as a full price product, and we're just gonna make it up to the modders to actually make this game fucking
Fucking
playable.
figure it out. Yeah.
And it's just
It really
the
is something,
last
and
like
it continues. These things continue to sell.
yeah.
Sure.
Well, the last two
Oh,
years
makes
have
sense.
been like brutal as far as I'm concerned because I know I've told Matt I was super excited for Payday 3 and I was super excited for
Oof.
for City Skylines 2. And both of those games are just absolute fucking dog shit. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Rip.
they didn't have to do anything tough with either one of those games.
Right. Right.
They literally just had to upgrade the graphics, add a few new features that they needed to add that made sense, and
Yeah.
people would have bought it. And instead, we just get like this absolute garbage, and then
I'm
we
pretty sure
have all
Payday
these.
2 still has a higher player count right now.
Oh, it 100% does. There's no
Yeah.
question. Um, and it's just these companies keep getting away with it because there's these people out there who just will defend these games no matter what. And people legitimately who don't like them but still pre-order shit
Mm-hmm.
or buy it and then just keep it and let whoever the developer is take the money and run. Um, but I think the whole early access thing has just gotten so fucking out of control too, where
Yeah.
everything is like early access, and there's like a 50% chance that it will make it out of early access,
And the
and then
term
there's
means
a
something different to
50%.
everybody. Deep Rock Galactic launched. It's in a state easily more fully finished than games that have been in EA for half a decade. That also have a studio of more than 4 guys. So it's
Yeah,
like,
oh,
okay,
100%.
obviously Valve
Same
in
with
no way. Here's another kind of a vector we could approach this from that I don't feel like a lot of other folks do, is that maybe it's time for Steam or for Valve to step in
yeah.
and say, okay, this is a certain set of guidelines if you want to, use our platform to sling this unfinished product. I mean, obviously, a lot of
Well,
studios already have the roadmap situation and the clusterfuck
yeah.
that is the game's store description. Those are every bit as bad as an Amazon listing at this point.
And Steam won't do that. Like if you look
No
at
No, of course not.
if
That's how
you
they make
look
their
at
money.
well, and if you look at all the basically
shovelware.
the yes, the equivalent of direct to video video games, um they're not going to do that. It's way
But
too much time, it's way too much effort.
Yeah.
And like you said, Matt, it's such a variable experience. Like Tom knows if Anton from
Hot dogs,
H3
torches, hand
VR
grenades. Yeah.
had stopped developing 2 years ago, no, I don't think anybody would have been pissed.
No,
Like,
no.
and that game's technically in early
There's
access.
standouts. I mean, of course, yeah, no, like again, Deep Rock, great example where it's like, yeah, no, that's just a straight up banger the entire time,
yeah,
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
and
There's certain stuff that's released, and you're just
If you
like,
think about that,
I don't
like
care if
that's
they finish.
you're right, right?
that's another
Yeah, I
thing
mean, like
I
that's
had.
ultimately
Go ahead.
you good.
No, you go ahead.
The like really what is the current early access model, but a very very thinly disguised live service model. I mean, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that, and I mean, like in complete fairness, I mean, we're talking about like how like we're all offended by this. I mean, it half the games that we probably collectively play are now in that same early access hellhole. And I don't necessarily think that it's because I don't think developers are releasing these games in early access because they want people to be out there beta testing them or doing anything like that. It's just because that the way that modern games work and the way that modern social media works with your ability to hype up the next big update that's coming out for your game because you can update it in a live service model where you just keep releasing updates and those updates get people coming back and get new people buying the game instead of getting all of your money on release day and then maybe having some people that were late comers trickling in later on. You just spread your money out over the entire life of the game. Like it makes way more sense, unfortunately, or fortunately in the case of certain games, but unfortunately for most of them, where it's just like that is the logical financial way for developers to release a game these days.
I don't know if
And
I necessarily
go
would
ahead.
agree with that though, just because like a lot of these companies, and some of these companies might be doing it just as a way to actually fund the game,
Sure.
which if they're upfront with that, I don't really care two ways.
Right.
But you have a lot of these games where it's actively getting worse as time goes on.
Right.
Like Ready or Not.
Sure.
Ready or Not has changed so much from even the last early access update
Mm.
compared to 1.0, and they just like they don't make they haven't made any good changes since then.
Sure.
Um, and I think it's one thing for smaller developers to do this early access model, and I think there is some element of sort of the intermittent reinforcement of, oh well, I got to keep coming back to this game to see what's new, um, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think treating it like a constantly updating uh, game form, and people
A
have to
service.
keep
Yeah.
giving you keep giving you money in order for this to become a finished product,
Yeah.
just doesn't sit well
Yeah.
with me.
Oh,
I
I
have a
couldn't
couple
agree
things to
more.
say.
I
Is
mean, yeah.
one kind of ties back to the previous conversation, but another one or the other one can go right into this as well, and that is in the form of how much it seems at all project budget levels now that traditional investment is going away. I guess I'll start with the latter point. I was going to go circle back first, but let's finish this up. In the form of, you can't. I mean, it was kind of like something the boomers were saying about Kickstarter, 10 years ago. It was like, oh, what do you think? We pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, slapping fuel tanks together at GM for, today's equivalent of, a nursing director's salary.
Yeah, $80 an hour.
Yeah. But we just, but nowadays someone could go on Kickstarter and if they're down on their luck, they can just collect $180,000. It's not what's happening a vast majority of the time, unless this is someone who knows an exceedingly large amount of people that they have working relationships with, and that's great. But like it's the kernel of truth there, maybe as applied to the corner of conversation we're having tonight, is that I mean you don't necessarily, whether you're a small startup or all the way up to like some of these bigger middle market operations, AAA, obviously they still do their thing. But you don't have to, as I said, have someone who have your CEO of your studio or your project manager or whatever, not look like a vagrant, and B, then show up to a boardroom full of folks who invest routinely and for and make their living by investing in projects in this particular industry. You got to stand up there and give a PowerPoint or bust out the marker board or whatever the fuck you want to do and sell them on this project. I said now you can roll up to Kickstarter, who basically, if you're not outright breaking the law with whatever you're collecting money for, they don't care. And have a couple Bangladeshi Fiverr artists, or nowadays an AI, whip up a gaggle of concept art proofs, semi-grammatically coherently write up a project description, and maybe also have some work in progress 3D model, Fusion 360 or Blender screenshots, and easy. That's an easy $50,000 right there if your project is remotely interesting. And I don't know if this is really a problem I have ideas to solve as such, but I mean it definitely is. It explains the spike in shovelware of the last few years, in my opinion. Some have argued since the great quasi gaming crash thing of the 80s, this really has not been something that has been an issue as such. And so that's one thing. But back to, as you were talking Payday 3 and City Skylines, just how really little was on the developers in terms of the product that they were planning that they had to put out to realistically sell well and succeed. That's hardly the first time I've seen and heard, conversations along those lines as well. Like obviously the new Dragon Age was just announced. People are not particularly happy. Same thing with it looks like, yet further they're deviating into like colorful hack and slash territory, despite the first game almost, blurring the line between like a tactics, it was kind of an old school ISO RPG with a new coat of paint with plausible real time combat. You mostly played it as turn based, but like these successful or these sequel titles just were in a lot of ways nothing like it. And that's another fan base that years ago was saying like all they fucking had to do was give us more story and maybe shine up a couple things, maybe not, but by and large just play like Origins. These are the people buying this product, and give us more to do within that framework. So I don't know if people are kind of the words of another podcaster I used to follow when he was taking a jab at somebody saying something stupid on his page, is quote, afraid of a phantom you have created. As far as these devs or publishers or marketing folks in either or both truly thinking that there's a lot of these people out there that would cry, this game's just like the last one, fuck that, and would rather, as I said, buy something so totally different than the first game that they complain about that instead. But it's just kind of an odd trend. I don't know what to make of it yet. That was a lot, so honestly,
I think there's certainly a balance that you have to wield between it just being a cash in by repeating the same formula. But I think a lot of companies are either making the mistake of completely trying to change the model in ways that, like with Payday, for example,
Hmm.
like they revamped the skill system for no reason. Like nobody asked them to do that,
Right.
and nobody was complaining about there was a certain barrier to entry with the um, old like the Payday 2 skill system, but it wasn't like you couldn't play it until you fully understood how the entire thing worked. Um, but they changed that. Um, and then they changed the unready button, which is just like basic stupid shit,
Yeah.
which they're finally fixing after 6 months. Um, there's like the new one had, I want to say, 3 or 4 missions where you literally just stand in a circle and wait for something to finish,
Oh
as
hell yes.
opposed to as opposed to actually like completing objectives.
Something more active. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like they just changed a bunch of shit that they didn't need
Well,
to
I
change.
mean, the problem is exactly that's the issue. They to quote the old red letter media joke, they did a survey of everybody that played the game to see what they wanted to change, and then they changed everything else in negative and shitty ways that nobody wanted to play. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, but counterpoint, when you get something like Helldivers 2, which was like that's a sequel, ostensibly. I mean, like you could look at the two of them and see a like an aesthetic and conceptual crossover, but beyond that, vastly different game from the first,
Hmm.
while still maintaining a lot of the same flavor and just like some of the general overarching concepts, like heavy friendly fire, stuff like team, like the general 4-man team
Four-man
play,
co-op. Yep.
dropping in and out, um, like that kind of stuff, but complete and then like keyboard dialing for the stratagems, but then completely flipping the being isometric versus being like a third person shooter thing right on its head, which is nuts. I mean, that's taking it to a completely different style of game, and everybody liked that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't
I
I
mean,
don't
and
have a problem with.
I have a running good joke about that is that we get a halfway decent third person game outside of a few particular franchises every 10 years. So I'm just, that definitely didn't hurt on that side of things either. And I don't know why we don't get more, but anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I guess
I was
part of
gonna
my
say too that I don't think it's necessarily a problem to take a risk. Like you look at something like the Spec Ops series
I literally
prior
one of the
to
last third person shooter I was thinking of. Yeah.
well, and it's like most of that series was not very good, and then the
sure
line came out, which was such a radical departure from everything else had done,
that people didn't even
and
realize there was another game series there.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, it was,
people didn't even think that that was a series. Like people were
yeah,
like, "What the hell is Spec Ops?" Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was great. I mean,
yeah.
it works if it's done well. I mean, it was still they still had the same basic function of it being a third person shooter, but it wasn't like realistic in any particular uh, form or fashion
Right.
compared to the other ones. Um, but I think the issue is more just changing stuff that doesn't need to be changed for the sake
hundred
of
percent.
changing it. Um, and I think we've just had a lot of disappointments in the last
True.
5 or 6, like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk
Yeah.
is a perfect example of just a like I've tried to play it 4 or 5 times and it just feels like a freaking paint by numbers open world game.
Yeah.
And that is a series with such a rich lore to draw from, and it just
The music bangs.
doesn't. Yeah, 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 and it just doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it feels vaguely like Cyberpunk, but it doesn't really. Um, and then you have, like, I don't know if either of you guys have played Trepang Squared.
No.
I just started playing it, and it's like it.
I remember hearing about it and watching a couple trailers. It sounded really cool.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody took a old school boomer shooter, mixed it with Fear, and
Yes, it
then
is the one I'm thinking of. Okay.
added like a super heavy dollop of SCP. elements to it, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. Like you actually, it's one of those games. It's kind of like another good series. I forget what the studio is, but they did both the
Oh yes, this is the guys with
Terminator.
the red glowing nod lenses.
Yes,
And
there's
Worth
a
of Eye's
company that
review is quote the ultimate lips out shooter. Hell yes.
yes, but there's a company that did the like the licensed Terminator and RoboCop games, and those are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, like the RoboCop one, you feel like RoboCop. Like
Rogue
you can't
City.
move
Yeah.
very fast, but you're just laying waste to everything because you're fucking RoboCop. Um, and it's that's almost like an anomaly twice because it's a movie tie-in that is done with actual passion, and it's a shooter that isn't just like complete garbage.
Yeah.
So Trepang was a nice surprise because it's along the same lines as um, RoboCop in that you feel invincible,
Yeah,
and
that's one I do
you
want
know
to check out.
there's still obviously a challenge just in quantity of enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's
But
probably I bet there's a few objectives like, oh, okay, get the guy before he escapes. You know, it's not a matter of you being or of
yeah,
very
I mean,
much being able to threaten you per se. It's a matter of there are other obviously there are still other ways to present a challenge.
well,
Right.
and there's like I'm on the second mission and some an anomalous uh, entity has shown up and you're gonna have to fight it at some point during the mission. So it's like the basic henchmen, you can just eat right through them, and then all of a sudden you get these tougher either military enemies or other things that you run up on, and they actually feel like a legit challenge just on their own as opposed to uh, in numbers.
Yeah.
So it's like I want to say it's like $18 right now. It's entertaining for at least for what it
Yeah.
is, and it doesn't it doesn't try to be more ambitious than it actually is. Like it's a very linear. There's one path for you to get through this level, which the older I'm getting, the more I'm kind of enjoying because it doesn't feel like just a walking simulator for the sake of being a walking simulator
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
being able
100%.
to call it open world as a result,
Oh yeah.
which I think pretty much any open world game for the most part has kind of fallen into that trap of, well,
It's definitely more than not. We were like open world, great. Like what's there?
Mm.
Do, is there
exactly.
You take
anything to
100 different
do?
paths to this objective, and there's an
Right,
encounter.
exactly. It's like I
The same
don't.
encounter
That does
appears at
nothing
3.
for me.
Well, like I think the Far Cry games even are a good example of that, where it's like, oh, you can uh, uh, approach this any way you want, and it's realistically, it's okay. I'm gonna try and stealth.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna
Yeah,
discover
exactly.
me, and then I just blow everything up.
Correct. The
Whereas,
illusion of choice.
yeah, it's unless you're playing like Far Cry 2 or something like that, which speaking of radical departures from the rest of the series, for the first and the second were very different experiences than any of the new ones.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that series.
yeah, I mean, 3 and 4 kind of run together for me. They're very similar, and then 5 is different enough that it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't heard
Agreed.
great things about 6, so I haven't even bothered.
No, I've heard very similar.
Yeah, and they've kind of really leaned very heavily into that like almost GI Joe aesthetic of okay, all the bad guys are gonna have really bright red or
Yeah, I mean that's like a series. I mean that's fucking. It's like that's an old series too. I mean that's
Mhm.
like over as series that have continued on over the years. It's pretty remarkable that's still going.
yeah,
But I mean like that like they made they're not bad. I mean like they've definitely made their choices in terms of like well we're gonna like lean into the kind like you said like the cartoony kind of general vibe of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
kind of what
think
they're
it's.
known for now.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong. It's just
Yeah.
they've done the same game like 3 or 4 times in a row at this
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
So
I mean, that's a lot of cases where like like Payday 3 is like actually sort of tangentially like related. Where it's to myself, I think like, I mean, as you noted, like really could just use like a fresh graphical coat of paint and like maybe a couple extra features. Like, does that even really need to be a 3? Like
right.
that was probably part of the issue. It's like, oh, this is a whole new title. Like we have to like think of a bunch of really new radical ideas to do to this. It's like, I mean, not really.
Well,
Like you
dude, and
can as long as they like you
the
retain a lot of the old features of the previous game. Sure.
well, it's like the thing where you didn't get any XP from completing heists. You only got them from completing achievements. Like, how did that make it off of a
Dude, who could say?
concept board?
Yeah, it's fucking wild.
And they,
Absolute brain dead decisions.
well, it's just funny because like all of the last 6 months has basically been them adding back in stuff from two, like an unready button or an
Yeah, that
offline
checks.
mode or a getting XP from missions or and that's one of the things I liked about two. There was like you could reasonably progress just by playing the game, but then there was like 1,200 achievements that you could unlock new masks and stuff with.
Mhm.
Like I enjoyed that. That was actually a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
the new one is just like, well, you gotta shoot this guy, shoot people with this gun 300 times, or complete this particular mission on hard 150
Well,
times. Like,
you're
Right.
just there to shoot people, right?
yeah, well, I, I don't want to do. The thing is, I don't. There's no mission in three. There's probably not even a lot of missions in two. I want to do 150 times.
Mm-hmm.
Fair
You know,
enough.
20 times maybe. Yeah, okay. If even if I don't like a mission, I'll push
Put
through
your
it.
time in.
But
Yeah.
I like 150. That's a like I think somebody on the subreddit at some point did the math and they were like, that's like fucking 30 hours if you don't fail once for an average mission timeline. And it's like I'm not putting that much time into a game,
No, fuck no.
especially a
Yeah.
game, especially a game I don't like that much. Um, and it's just stupid. Like I played the second one. I think I have like 750 or 800 hours or something like that in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just it's because I enjoyed it. But now it's I don't know. It's just garbage.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't.
two's still good. I mean, what? God, it's like it's. It's not necessarily a related topic, but that has like the same. I have the exact same problem with Payday 2 as I do with Team Fortress 2, where it's just like I adored the aesthetic of that game, and just
Mhm.
Right.
over the course of this life, they have just dicked it into this like unbelievably insane like cacophony of aesthetics and gameplay and like cosmetics. You're just like, what in the fuck am I looking at here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the ultimate uh
Half the reason I was excited for Payday 3 was to get a reset on just like
right.
the general like vibe and aesthetic of the game.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the worst perpetrator of that is the Call of Duty series.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I I was watching a video earlier, and it's like Nicki Minaj is in the game,
Right.
Homelander's in the
Like,
game, Cheech
Jesus,
and Chong are in the game
Oh yeah.
now. Like,
fucking
what the
A
fuck?
insane.
mutual friend has said the same shit about Fortnite. They were kind of
Yeah, well, I mean,
to
That's
the point
leaned
of
into its
becoming
goofy
one.
aesthetic
Yeah.
from the very beginning, so I
Well,
can
well,
at
no, but
least slightly forgive that. But like,
insofar as being a billboard for our larger carcinogenic culture, as far as literally what Evan was
yeah,
just beginning to say is,
I'm sure Mr. Beast is in there, or
sure.
you
yeah,
know,
every Marvel character skin,
yeah,
and it's just
yeah. Or I
it's
remember
as like I
one of
said,
my
no,
one of
one of
my
these stupid games that get popular and have no identity of their own. I said it's not an aesthetic issue as such. It's again they got to have cut every possible license deal with every goofy DLC to make all these goofy
I wonder
DLCs for
though,
every other
does
IP.
anybody like that? Like, who cares? Like,
14-year-olds?
is there
I
some
don't know.
Spider-Man fan
No.
out there that's like jizzing himself because fucking
There is.
Spider-Man is in Fortnite?
100%.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me tell you a story.
Hell yes.
One of my
I don't doubt you
Gather
guys.
round.
I'm just like I've
No,
never
no.
run into these fucking
Grab
people.
the
God.
flasks and
one of my
cigarettes. Gather
friends-
around.
One of my friends at work collects comic books, and there was one particular Batman comic that he almost wasn't able to get because there was a code for a Batman Fortnite skin, and
Okay.
he was like 3 days later. He was like, I should have bought like 5 or 6 of them because it's like a $5 comic book,
Yep.
and they're going for $60
Holy shit!
because people wanted just
A fucking
like
code.
they didn't even want the comic, they just wanted the code,
Right,
so
right.
they could be Batman. You gotta think a lot of these kids are, or
Yeah,
a
and they
lot
don't
of
know
these
Batman's a comic
are
book character.
or they're just, that's they've seen the movie and that's their favorite character, or it's somebody like I have some friends who play Fortnite with their kids, and
Sure.
they might be, well, okay, and it's $5 for this comic book, and I'll at least get to play as somebody who I can identify and enjoy
Right.
playing as when I'm playing with my kid. So I don't know. It's just like Matt said, it's kind of an avatar for our larger culture, and um, it's just gotten to the point, I think, where everything feels like a marketing opportunity,
Oh,
or
100%.
a a moment for somebody to buy something so that they can have this very small cosmetic feature. And it's
Late stage
just,
capitalism in a nutshell.
yeah, I don't know. Like I enjoy being able to um customize stuff. Like the I think the one that was the model that I enjoyed the most, not that I ever ended up playing the game, but Insurgency Sandstorm, where it was like,
I was
all
just
right,
about to actually start or reinstall that. That was something reminded me of it just this past day or two. I remember having some fun with it.
Squad is a pretty good one too. Where I mean, it's very low key. Like if you want to
yeah,
use it to support the game a little bit, like that's fine. Give yourself a little bit of customization while still staying within like the flavor of the game generally. I can't
it,
imagine that makes them all that much money though, which is the sad
no, and
part, I
that's
suppose.
yeah, but I liked the idea of, all right, everybody has the access to the same equipment, but if you want, a Vityaz helmet, or a Grayman gear sponsor licensed set of gear, pay us $2 and you can have it,
Yeah.
just because that's how you want to look.
Sure.
Like, dude, I got no problem with that. I'll
Selling us
pay
No, not at
somebody
all.
cosmetics. Yeah.
a
No,
couple
I
of
completely
bucks,
agree.
but I think it's just everything has that, and
Getting old.
it's different when it's a specific character, um of like, oh, you can play as Homelander in this fighting game, um and he may or may not be uh completely unbalanced for the rest of the game.
Right. Yeah, that's obviously a huge problem. I mean, even I also generally don't have a problem with like cosmetic DLCs. And like if you're going to do that as like your live service monetization model, that's fine because that has like very little effect on gameplay, very difficult for people to be salty about that. What does piss me off is when then again, like it takes the aesthetic of the game, which is really cool, and just
Yeah,
shits all over it. Like
well,
completely ruins
Right.
it.
Yeah. I mean, it's
it waters
cosmetics as
down.
a business model or product you're selling in tandem with your game or whatever else. I mean, it's no issue if they have like a modicum of context within
Right.
that
Yes.
universe, etc.
Couldn't agree
Like
more.
this is, I mean, this was obviously the calm before the storm, to put it politely. There's one reason I learned there was more to this. One reason I had so much trouble getting into Warframe, despite the pretty tight goddamn gameplay loop years ago, when a buddy got me into it, um, was how many of the frames, the character, they're not mechs, they're the character skins, the classes of
Armor,
the things
basically.
things you can play as, the principal unlock of the game. You have like 5 or 6 of them that have this really cool like Geiger with a dash of cyberpunk vibe, and there's like this whole world that, for the most part, adheres to that. Outside of a few areas that kind of get a little Final Fantasy, which is fine, and a few other ones. And then my buddy told me, because he was heavy into the game at the time, he's like, "Oh yeah, it like got mostly finished, and it was this one guy's in the art department, this sort of one guy's larger vision." And then he left, and they just kind of kept developing, and basically everything to release after that point looks like a Gundam. And as I said, it still kind of works, but like as it, in years enter present day, where, as I said, you have every Marvel character running around in Fortnite, which is that used to be a game with a modicum of originality to its IP, despite the obviously very um, lighthearted, whimsical sort of look. And yeah, it's like at a certain point, it's very hard to convince people that your game isn't just functioning as a billboard. At that point, I mean, again, maybe there's some fun to be had there, but when you're just seeing, as you said, Nicki Minaj running around and on the call, even a game that is hardly as realistic as the Call of the Duty, it's like, this is still fucking stupid.
Yeah, yeah, it
Right.
makes absolutely no sense in universe for her to be there, or Homelander to be in Mortal Kombat, or I don't know. The Mortal Kombat games that get kind of a pass just because they at least have a sense of humor a lot of times, whereas Call of Duty took itself so incredibly fucking serious for
For
so
the longest
long,
time. Yeah.
and just like this
Okay, now we're
diarrhea
swinging in another direction.
of pop culture references. Um, that it's like, okay, well, I didn't really have a whole lot of respect for you to begin with after the like first two
Yeah.
of the series, and now I just have like absolutely no that and the fact that even on sale they're still trying to sell like the original Modern Warfare for $20,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was
which is
discussing that with somebody, and like they're like, "Well, they got to do something." I'm like, "No, they don't. No,
yeah,
they
no,
could literally just stop making the games. Like,
or
do
they could
do
just
do not
literally make
Yeah, they could move on. There
something
could be a
other than
new big
move
shooter
on."
series backed up
yeah,
by a studio like
yeah.
what are they? Oh, Treyarch and Infinity Ward. Are they still the ones that like flip flop? One develops a Call of Duty on even years,
Or
and one
it's
develops,
Activision. I think they're
or
both
Activision bought
Activision.
one of them. Yeah, I
Oh,
think Treyarch, whatever.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, no,
They could just
they could come
make
up
something
with
new.
they could take a risk and come up with the next
Hmm.
big shooter IP, right?
Or
But I
they
mean,
could like they could do the From Software model and revisit something they haven't done in a long time and go back to Armored Core. Like I wish
yeah.
Take-Two and Rockstar would take a break from Grand Theft Auto and make another Smuggler's Run,
Oh
which
fuck
was a
yeah,
really
dude.
though those games were fucking awesome back in the day.
Yeah.
I loved those games, but there
I
hasn't
can
been
just I
one
can
since
feel
like,
the monkey's paw slowly curling as you talk.
well, yeah, exactly, and it'll be terrible and whatever.
Right.
That's fine, but it was those games were fucking great back on
Absolutely.
PlayStation 2. And the soundtracks were, I mean, maybe not for you guys, but it was all like really good techno music. And
Yeah.
I fucking, I always found like a couple new songs that I enjoyed um, just from playing that game. And it was a little, it was a racing game, but it was also like a almost like a Twisted Metal style game at the same time.
Mhm.
And um, it was something a little different, and it's not Grand Theft Auto and it's not Red Dead Redemption, so there's fucking zero opportunity that it's probably ever going to get made again. But like you said, just take something of a risk and do something different, and people people will probably show up just for that if it's halfway decent.
Properly marketed. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually
100%.
there is no universe where, as I said, it's kind of weirdly optimistic in context and everything, but where, okay, there's basically 10 IPs that every fucking video game takes place within the context of it. Like, it's everything gets old or everything gets old eventually. I almost said everything gets old fast. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess the question answering that I don't really necessarily know if anyone asked, but it might be on the mind of some of the audience at this point, is will this keep up for much longer? I really don't think so. You can look at uh, how many less games come out since like 10 years ago versus today, 15 years ago versus 10 years ago, and yeah, and it's just also kind of a darker note how many studios have closed or been absorbed. Like eventually people are going to be like, this is fucking stupid, and developers are going to start hopefully taking more risks and seeing what happens by way of trying to get the next new big franchise for a given genre or genres out the door.
Well, I think it's really whoever ends up getting swept up in the latest TikTok craze is what ends up being. Maybe look at and again, as much as I love Helldivers too, it's like very clearly that game it's fantastic and it is wildly popular. But I mean
yeah,
the fact
because of
that
a bunch of people getting interested who didn't realize it was a sequel.
right, exactly, yeah, the 99% of the people that are playing that game probably didn't even know there was a Helldivers 1.
Right.
And
Let
it's
alone
again like
played it.
it has the exact same vibe as fucking, let's see, Among Us, Fall Guys, Lethal Company, like get swept up in a, like I said, 30-second TikTok video and explodes violently out of nowhere and then drops off in 2
Vampire
months.
Survivors.
Yeah,
Is that the current one?
I've heard that slaps. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna. That's another game that was made basically nothing, with no context, and it just got super popular because A, it was halfway decent,
Yeah.
and B, it got some traction among YouTubers or whatever.
I should
Right.
clarify.
Yeah, exactly
I
right.
would not
Influencers.
argue at any point that like in the indie scene or even into the middle market up to a certain point that we're having any problems is at finding new and interesting things to play. I mean, it's really a running joke at this point. If I have an idea for okay, what if this game had this, and this? I run a random Google search, find a few Reddit posts. I am easily checking 4 out of 5 boxes most of the time. You guys remember my text the other night? It's in development, but I think there is a similar game already out. The dive bar owner simulator.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
But I've had multiple other moments like that. Like, oh, what kind of other space mining games are out, or what kind of other shit like this are out? And I always find something. Instead in the indie or the low level middle market world, or God forbid, somewhat older stuff. And yeah, so I said I will never argue that there's not something to play, and I guess I can take us into another topic or another thing that's been on my mind. I'd be curious to your opinions about as far as how do we say this? So earlier I was reinstalling Battlefield 1, and I think some other game had an update. I'm like, wow, isn't this is patching nowadays in the past quite a few years fucking awesome or what as compared to now? In fairness, games came out at a higher level of polish and finish years ago that it wasn't a tragedy to play version 1.0 for the lifespan of that game. But like again, to say that there is nothing vastly better about the state of things today, like do you guys remember what a patch entitled even damn near to 2010 for some stuff? You had to find your way to old to forums with File Planet links and hope that it worked
or
from there,
GameSpy
and drop
Right.
it
Yeah.
exactly in the proper subfolder.
Game facts. Yeah.
I mean, so everything and its brother was not on Steam yet, so you could not. And I can't remember if they ever really, or if even they supported this from the get go. But yeah, this idea that you fire it up and it, even other software as well, that you fire it up and it checks and
100%.
applies the latest updates without reinstalling or even needing to be restarted sometimes is
Well, I mean,
yeah.
I guess that is the upside of always online stuff
Mhm.
for in a lot of regards.
Oh
But
yeah, I don't think there's anything to say that gaming now is in every aspect a worse experience. There's a lot of stuff in terms of I think accessibility to
Mhm.
a wider audience of people. It's the rise of fast internet has made it significantly easier for, like, I remember playing Duke Nukem on over the internet, and it was like you needed a second phone line, or if somebody picked up, you'd get disconnected,
God.
and it was
Dial-up
just
days. Yeah.
it's there's been a lot of quality of life improvements, but I don't think necessarily the quality of games is held to the same standard
No, I'm
that
in
it might have
complete agreement. But I
once
guess
been.
my main thing was like, oh no, there are absolutely people who sit and argue, like their life is, Limp Bizkit lyrics about how everything is fucked and everybody sucks, and it's just so demonstrably untrue. Is that if
Yeah,
you look
no.
beyond, you're the people who say this shit that is it dildos at the GM plant who all started right after high
Really hitting
school
GM.
and
Really hitting GM hard tonight.
well, I'm in a mood and I've made a good vehicle in the span of my lifetime. But anyway, uh, but who they consider themselves gamers because one just got the new Madden and one just got the new Call of Duty and one just got the there hasn't been a new Battlefield in a minute, has there? Or they're that level. I'm not trying to be like, oh, they're not real gamers, shit, but like no, they're the ones who think that everything is truly so bad because they remember Modern Warfare 1 in 2008, and conveniently forget the four Xbox 360s they went through in a 3-year span before they found one that could handle it, handle more than 5 online matches before a meltdown. And
It's a lot of nostalgia, of course. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
it's or just stuff that you would have been amazed by when you were younger,
mm-hmm.
but you've seen in the intervening time done better and sooner.
Right.
So you're just it's not as impressive as it would have been if it had been something you would experience 10 or 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
I get that a lot with movies where it's like, all right, well, this was pretty decent, and if I was 20 again, I would have loved this, but I've seen this done before and I've seen it done better.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think some of the stuff that we're kind of meh on kids who are 15, 20
Oh, like
years
this fucking
younger.
rules. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be their version of whatever,
Yeah,
it'll
totally.
it'll be their Half-Life 1.
Yep.
Whereas
Exactly right.
if they went to play Half-Life 1, they'd be like, I can't get past the graphics, man. Like this shit just
Right,
looks
right.
awful. So I like you said, Tom, I think there's a very healthy dose of nostalgia that comes in to any critique, but um, I also think there's that doesn't exempt developers and gaming companies from doing a decent job. It's it's not solely that everything is a product of nostalgia, but it's also not solely people are just being whiny. you
Oh,
know
yeah, no, true enough.
and I think to a certain degree, especially with like larger gaming
Oh, absolutely. AAA
com-
games, yeah, have definitely
yeah,
the
I think
business model has caused a lot of problems.
yeah, and I think the Blizzard model has really wrecked a lot of stuff in terms of the always online Diablo fiasco that has become an industry standard, and um, crunch time and stuff like that. And I think, like I said, at the higher um, the higher capital investment or higher size companies, it's gotten a lot worse.
Same can be said for movies. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's once you start blowing out these like, multi-billion-dollar budgets for games and movies, it's just like, what the Jesus. I mean, at that point, everybody's so invested, literally and figuratively, that it's just like that it needs to make its money back. That there are simply too many cooks. Like that,
Yeah.
it's always going to be a mess. Look at. I mean, so I honestly, that's at least from what I can tell. I mean, like this seems like the postmortem for like Cyberpunk was a lot of that. It was a ton of hype, a ton of investment, and just too big for the britches. Like
Well,
we
and
know
it
CD
took them.
Projekt Red can make a good game. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
they've
well,
done it.
I think it's also that it took them what 8 years to make that game.
100%. Yeah, and I mean that you know what? I mean that nails on another excellent point, which is that a lot of the technology is moving so quickly that it's like if you develop a game and like not to forgive companies for forcing people into crunch time or anything like that, but I mean at a certain point, like you you could have the Star Citizen problem, which obviously has its own set of other unrelated problems, but you could have the Star Citizen problem of and to a certain degree the Cyberpunk problem where the game engines changed on you 5 times over the course of your
Right.
8-year development cycle.
Yeah. No, I think that's a
What
totally
are they on now?
reasonable
Aren't they
point as
still on
well.
CryEngine?
Uh,
Or a type of one?
shit, fucked if I know.
No.
Now that you mention it.
That was the plan like 8 years ago, as best I recall.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think a lot of it's just me being old, and that's fine.
Well, yeah,
I'll take that. I'll take
my
that
fucking back
criticism.
hurts after going out and playing airsoft all day today. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh,
exactly.
this is this is bullshit. Fuck
Right.
being old.
I hated it, and I hated it right away.
Understandable. Understandable.
But
Sweet.
I think you could say the same thing about a lot of movies now
Yeah,
too,
let's get into
though.
movies
Where
now.
Totally,
Well,
it's
have you
totally,
watched
totally.
anything? Well, to finish this point, Evan, but I'm curious if you watched anything good lately. I've seen have I seen much myself? No, but I've seen some posts by a couple of those pages I follow. I've told you I
um
follow about the.
yes, I have seen something good lately, and I told you about it, Matt. But Tires on
Oh
Netflix.
yes,
Oh my
I've
fucking
texted about
god,
4
dude.
friends about it,
Oh, dude,
and someone else
it's
told me about it before you. I can't remember who.
it's like what? It's like Cumtown was asked to make a TV show. It's fucking great. Like the current episode, they're doing a bikini car. It's like a kind of like The
I
Office,
say it's literally
but
about a tire shop.
it's about a tire shop, and they're all their idea to make some money is to do a bikini car wash
Okay.
where they'll check people's tires while they're doing it, and then upsell them on
God, I feel
tires.
like this has Matt written all over it.
Oh, dude, it's great. But so like the one white trash girl gets all of these friends of hers to come in and do it,
It's on Netflix,
and
right?
yes,
Okay.
and somebody comes in to take pictures of the shop because the franchise might be selling it, and so they've got to usher all these women out, and the one mechanic character is trying to convince them to all get into a shipping container. It's they're like, no, I'm not getting in a fucking shipping container so you can human traffic me. And he's like, no, it's fine, man. It'll be totally fine. And the guy at the business store is like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to get him in this fucking shipping container. And honestly, it's a lot fucking harder than I thought it was gonna be. So it's and like I said, um, Matt, you know this. Stav
Mhm.
has a recurring role on it, and I don't think I've seen a single scene where he's not eating something. So that's that, and some of the older Friday the 13th are about as good as it's gotten lately.
Okay.
What about you guys?
I mean, I think the last piece of like major media that I consumed was Dune 2, honestly.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about. I've definitely seen a couple movies since, but not a ton. Have I watched?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, like what have I watched anything?
More so just the 400 shows that I
I
float between, and then I wonder where I'm
Oh, I
picking
did
up
rewatch Kelly's Heroes. Got to do that
sweet.
after
Okay.
Hmm.
fucking Sutherland died. Rip.
Hmm.
Huge rip.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. If I was gonna watch a
Completely required.
Sutherland movie, it'd probably be the 72 Body Snatchers.
Hmm.
I'm not sure I've seen much else that he's in, to tell you the truth.
He's really good in
He's
the
great. I just love
in
the guy.
the Invasion of Body Snatchers that he's in. Um,
Yeah.
Very young Jeff Goldblum's in there too. He's in Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis. He's
Oh
in
yeah.
Puppet Masters, which is okay. Um, he's got a cameo in Kentucky Fried Movie, which is really funny. Um, but yeah, he was a decent actor, and he's
Huge
been in
rip.
a ton of shit.
Right.
So
Huge rip. Obviously, I like him as Oddball for obvious reasons, but
yes,
quality.
of course, anything tank
Oh no,
related.
you know I did rewatch fucking Death of Stalin again. Just gotta love that movie.
I have yet to see that, but I feel
It's
like
fucking
it's
love it,
great.
but
It is an
I need to see
awesome
it.
movie. 100%. It is that is like one of the very few movies that I like digitally actually own because I would like I could like I've rented that movie like 3 times. So like I'm like, you know what? Not at this
I'm just
point.
gonna buy
Fuck it.
it.
Might as
Yeah.
well have a
Yeah.
copy on hand. Yeah.
No, that is just a tremendous movie for sure.
Actually, that would be a perfect one to watch soon and set the tone. I finally, for the 14th time in 10 years, I'm getting back into the Americans.
Mm,
I just got it's back on Hulu, so I don't have to fucking go and get FX Plus, whatever the hell it was on before.
Yeah, no, that movie is how you write a black comedy, and not the like her it's edgy, therefore it's a black comedy
Yeah.
kind of thing.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
that movie just chef's kiss. Absolutely fantastic. Could not recommend it more.
I was actually just talking with a mutual friend of ours the other day about how he just told me some silly story of something a friend of his was dealing with somewhere at the very. I mean, we have a pretty large Irish population, Irish American population too. But these where this person was, they were all the dive bars nearby and all the Irish pubs were really weird about serving car bombs. It was like offensive to order it as one. Like even if you like
Oh,
just
sure.
listed off
I
the
mean,
ingredients and told them
that's
how to prep it, they
That's
wouldn't do
awesome.
it.
like that's kind of fair to be
And
honest.
it's
Like you
okay.
go into
Well, I
like a
just
bar that has
don't
an
never
Irish
an
flag in
issue.
it and you order a car bomb, like that's that you might get in a
There
fight.
would,
And that's fair. I'll allow that.
so okay, maybe it's more of a thing than I thought. But where was I going with this? What
I
were we
don't
talking?
know, man.
What were we talking about
Isn't that
immediately prior?
Death of Stalin?
Oh yes, yes. So that's how we get. He was just telling this story. I'm like, wow, you should write this and the 100 other stories like this you've told me down because like we really don't get like proper like these would be great episodes in like some kind of dramedy. And I just thought about how few of those we really get. Like between very recently and they're about similar in tone, maybe. Obviously have the really dark shit too, but like between the OG British, like The Office, which is kind of a classic example of one, and like shows kind of like The Bear more recently or shit like that. You don't get, as I said, these like I mean when you do get them, they're kind of 70% serious, 30% funny show, and not a ton of them really deviate from there. If that makes sense. Again, I don't know. Maybe I have to inwoken myself. That's our trademark term on the show here.
Hmm.
Filing a patent.
Of course.
And myself on more of them. Evan, do any come to mind on your end?
Of like
Dramedies?
truly black, oh,
Yeah,
dramedies. Um,
I guess black comedy
I
is
mean, I
interchangeable with
think
black comedy, but
did you ever did you guys ever watch Louder Milk on Netflix?
no.
I'm
I
not.
think that kind of skirts the line of being a dramedy.
Mhm.
I think it's probably more on the comedy side of things, but um, it's it's the guy from Office Space, Ron Livingston, is the main character, and he's
Okay, this
ex
looks
music
kind of
music.
familiar now.
Yeah, he's an ex music critic who is all an alcoholic, and he runs this Alcoholics Anonymous, although it's not very anonymous, group. And there's some pretty serious elements to it
Yeah.
that
Well, hard
happen
eight on
in.
IMDb. I'm gonna have to check this out tonight.
Yeah, it was and it's one of those shows that doesn't wear out its welcome.
I would say it was on for three
It's
years. Looks like about 10
it's three
episode seasons.
years, and I think they just knew when to get out.
Yeah.
Um,
Always
Same
a
with
key. That's a key that it's a
yeah,
lost art in the current day and age.
Mm.
yeah. That and Man Seeking Woman,
Oh yeah.
um, which is definitely more of a satire slash comedy, but that knew when to leave as well after like 3 seasons. So yeah, I mean, I think Louder Milk is probably the closest one I can think of off the top of my head.
Mm.
Or I don't know. I mean, it's tough to quantify or qualify, I should say, where to draw the line. Because like if you watch The Wire,
Mhm.
The Wire is
Heard
a
of it?
serious yeah, The Wire is a serious show, but there's a lot of fucking comedy in that.
Oh, 100%.
Like when the old guy gets knocked, the old cop gets knocked down and he's just laying on the ground smoking a cigarette
Oh,
while
yeah.
everybody else is beating the living shit out of the kid who hit him. Um, the whole the infamous fuck scene where it's just 5 minutes of McNulty and his partner. I want to call him Candyman, but that's not his character's name in that
Bunk
show.
Moreland. Yeah.
Um,
He was in
yeah, and they're
I forget
just
what I saw, but he's in something coming out or fairly recently released. I saw a trailer or commercial for it. I'm like, hey, I forget
yeah.
the
Oh,
actor's
dude, I love again, I keep wanting to call him Candyman, but I love his character on that show.
Yep.
And McNulty. I mean,
Jimmy.
those two. They're like they're
Holy fuck, does he look like Max Payne nowadays? Dominic
yeah.
West.
Yo,
I'm looking up. What the fuck is Wendell Pierce?
yes.
What is the newest
What's his
thing?
fucking name on that show?
Bunk.
Bunk. Yes, that's right.
William
Bunk.
Moreland is his full name. They call him Bunk
Yup.
for whatever reason.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Or like when the two of them get drunk and he's like pissing on the railroad tracks as the train is coming, and like that's a serious show, but there's a lot of intentional comedy in it,
yeah.
and but I don't think anyone would necessarily classify it as a comedy, even though you will generally laugh quite a bit during a single
Fair
episode of
enough.
that
Yeah,
show.
no, that's you're absolutely right. That would never be classed as
They
a comedy,
balance,
but
yeah, they balance things out with, on that side of things. Oh, Dominic West was Theron in 300. I forgot about that. Anyway,
Yeah, it's just it's I think it can get a little blurry if you do a really good dramedy of figuring out which side it kind of lands on.
mm-hmm.
And it's also very tough to pull off. I think very I think writers tend to be usually pretty good at comedy or serious shit, and unless you have a show where you have like an actual cast of writers or just somebody who's very very talented writing for it, um, I think it's very hard for like a screenwriter in a movie to mix those two. I think
absolutely agreed. Yeah.
unless you have like a duo like uh, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright writing something together
Yep.
where again that's still not a single person though.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to think of them because I don't think there's truly a lot of them that
Right, exactly what
are
I'm saying.
worth
That
seeing.
totally fit the bill. Like, yeah, that you could like check all the boxes and
Right,
call a
okay, so
dramedy.
that's the context. I get what you're saying. So where's the line? Like, is it the
Right,
wire
right.
where like someone just literally dealing with some horrible issue is acts like a fuck up and it's just kind of a funny comic relief scene
Where
for
does
a
it
couple minutes
officially
over
become a
4 episodes.
dramedy as opposed to just
Yeah.
a drama that has some comedy kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I think The Wire, for as serious as it is, has a shit ton of comedy in it. Um,
Yeah.
and
More than you'd think. Right.
uh,
Right.
yeah, but again, it's like, well, uh, what is the percentage of comedy to drama ratio that it
Right,
has
right.
to be for it to be a dramedy, you know?
I mean, I guess maybe it's more intent. Just like that was like the idea that it was a dramedy. Like that is what makes it a dramedy versus something that just happens to have humor in it and is also dramatic.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most notable ones are probably like maybe the old school Roseanne is like it's a sitcom, but it's
Sure.
also like very heavily about lower middle class, or The Simpsons, like the early
Yeah,
seasons
fair
of The
enough. Yep,
Simpsons,
totally.
um, were much more a dramedy than what it grew into.
Yeah.
Um, and
People forget
I
about that.
think, well, and I think a lot of people don't they don't necessarily want to watch a show where they're not sure which they're gonna get that week.
Yeah,
And what I mean by that is, like, if you're in the mood for comedy, you want to know that you're going to be watching a fucking show that's
and you're gonna be laughing.
gonna
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
laugh at you,
Make it
you
a
know.
habit.
Or if you're in the mood for something serious, you want to watch a show where you know you're going to get something serious. Because if you're in a shitty mood and you want to laugh about something, then you get a serious episode.
That's gonna suck. Yeah,
It's gonna kill your mood.
100%.
totally.
The vibe, if
So
you
I
will,
think
for
yes,
our audience under 19.
so I think a lot of people, A, it's hard to pull off. B, I don't
Yep.
think it's easy to capture and maintain an audience for that type
Right.
of show and or movie.
Vague parallel to or callback to our gaming side of the discussion about third-person shooters. I mean, when you adjust for your, not that I have anything against people enjoy them, your more Saints Row, Grand Theft Auto, Payday vibe sort of games. I mean, there's not you get one. I half joke, you get one every 10 years. It's
Yeah. Yep.
whether it's something with this really intense, gripping, single player narrative like Spec Ops, or just a rock solid co-op game like Helldivers 2. One was also third person, but I'm talking
Also good.
over the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I know what you mean.
since Gears of War functionally went away. I mean, you want to talk about, was it, were we playing 4 or 5 at a coworker's house years ago? You want to talk about a game that, at least with regard to its multiplayer, is literally just selling you the same thing every few years. Holy shit. The new one looks pretty cool, though, and should be fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know there was a new one
They
coming out.
just announced it, yeah.
I don't know, it's
Oh,
one of those
gotcha.
games that's like always in the background. It's always like somewhat popular, but never gets. It was obviously like way back in the day when that was one
Yeah.
of like the big three on Xbox. But yeah, nowadays, like I'm glad they're still making them and releasing them. Good for them. They're out there,
I know, yeah, 5
not
is on
making
Steam,
huge
and
waves, but still
right.
being somewhat respectable.
Yeah, and then 5 is actually still, I say still like things ever go away. On Steam, phenomenal reviews. The
Yeah.
tactics game was probably one of the best I've played. And yeah, no, it seems like even though, I mean, getting down into the rabbit hole here, I don't know how woke you guys were on the series in the 2 or 3 days, like early 2010s. But there was this isn't the first prequel they did. You guys remember Judgment at all? It was technically the fourth installment, fourth or fifth game that came out.
Yeah, I was never. I mean, I liked the series
Sure.
aesthetically, etc. I never actually really played the games all
Right.
that much.
Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how this progresses, because they really want to. I don't know if they've painted themselves into a corner. I don't really know what the larger story, where that went after 3, but there as a tactics takes place like right pretty early on in after Emergence Day, I think like a year later thereabouts. Um, this new game that we called Emergence, I think, takes place within the first few days or weeks of the Locust attacks. But and it might have been a little ways afterwards, but there was another prequel game called Gears Judgment in 2011 is when Gears 3 came out. 2012, 2013-ish. And that kind of flopped. I don't remember if it kind of played shitty or people just didn't like the reset, if you will. But no, there seems to be some level of shift at that point, because the tactics game, literally called Gears Tactics, very well reviewed as well, sold perfectly fine from what I understand. But yeah, 5 did great as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean,
No, like I said, always been like respectable.
As it figures out how it wants to expand, and I think they could really this. If Emergence is great, awesome, but I think they could really finally announce the remaster of 1, 2, and 3 coming to not just PC, but platforms those of us actually use, i.e., Steam, and go from there, if you will. That's something they've.
You'll take Epic Game Store and you'll like it.
When it has all of the features of its. That's another thing too. What do you, I don't want to be like, what do you guys make of that whole situation? But like, just I don't know how we can talk about this, because I really don't think you guys disagree at all. But like, what is the deal with a platform like that? Because you have people simping for it from time to time. Like, you want to talk about a hill to die on that really nothing good comes of.
I'm of two minds.
What is the idea with these software companies, for lack of a better catch-all term, launching this shit that's supposed to directly compete with other shit that's been in the pun intended game for years and years, but just to this day does not have some of those features. Like, oh, we'll just wait 8 years, until it's but we'll use it for that 8 year interim until it's where we want it to be and where everything else.
Well, it's boardroom
has-
decisions, and that's very clearly not a like a super smart
Right.
business decision. It's like a hey, quick cash, money,
Right, as best I
that kind of
recall,
thing.
I mean, it might. I don't know if it has either of these features yet, but it absolutely launched. This is Epic without, I believe, any wish listing, any gifting.
Launched without a fucking friend system.
Holy shit!
Yeah, it was a mess.
And
Yeah,
as I said, 5-6 years ago, when everything was another its own little quasi social media platform, I feel like that's simmered down a little bit. But like, yeah, what the fuck?
yeah. No, I mean it was a mess. I mean, I get it. And like I said, I mean I'm of two minds because like on one hand, having Steam as a monopoly, even if they're like for now
Relatively
a benevolent
benign.
monopoly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole benevolent dictator still a dictator kind of thing. Like that's dangerous, and I do fully support the idea of there being more competition in that field. On the other hand, trying to make
Competition has
the
to roll
gimmick,
up and be like, hey, here's this list of problems Steam has.
and here's why
Fix
our
them
shit's
all.
better, right?
Right.
Not
Mhm.
here's why you have to use our service because
Yeah.
we're going to make things fucking exclusive on it, which is just like the dumbest, most anti-consumer, bad faith way to make you look like a complete dipshit trash fire that people are going to argue about on the internet for the next 10 years. Like, what were they thinking? I really don't get it. You're 100% right. They could have looked at Steam, said, here's well, I mean, maybe done some market research, stuff like that. I guess there's not that much that's super offensive about Steam, so maybe that's kind of the tough part. But like, taking one look at that and been like, hey, here's us. We're out here. We fix some of this stuff. Give us a
Well,
shot.
you know what? This goes right back to Payday 3, where they took a survey and changed shit that nobody asked for.
Correct. And then
You
added a
know?
bunch of shit that people actively dislike. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's
Wild.
I don't understand this. I think there's this hyper focus, and I don't know if it's waning now, but there was this hyper focus on like customer acquisition of,
Yeah.
oh, well, if we can get people to use our platform, we can harvest all this data about them and then more
Oh yeah, that's
accurately sell them
100% what it comes down to.
whatever. But it's like I don't think that really is the best way to get people to give you their information.
Right.
Right. Right.
And certainly expending all this effort and money into a platform like that when you don't really need to.
Yeah. I mean, you're not Steam works. Like, there's nothing.
And
Like I said,
and
that's
if
kind
you
of the tough part. And there's nothing
and
really
if
that's like super wrong with it.
and if you want to get customer acquisition elements out of your gaming, just pay somebody else for that. I mean, there's more than enough companies out there that will sell you customer data without
True.
enacting your entire, this entire infrastructure just to get that information. Because I can't think, I mean, other than some business decision of, oh, well, we don't want to take the 5% haircut on selling this on Steam. We want every single dollar that we sell this for. Um, there's not really a whole lot of reason other than that. I find it hard to believe that unless you are a prolific and large company, that the money you're going to make back in this infrastructure is going to meet or exceed the Steam price or a Steam you know uh,
They're cut. Right.
pay. Yeah, their commission is the word I was
Mhm.
looking for. And I mean, if you have a modicum of business sense, like I'm pretty sure if you're a good enough and large enough company that has a decent catalog, you can just fucking negotiate a different price
Mhm.
that
True.
of the commission. Because Steam's going to say, oh, well, guess what? We have this game and we have all these other games. from Electronic Arts or Activision or whatever, and they'll be subject to Steam sales, and that we'll take 10% instead of 15, and everybody makes out happy. But I think just these um, companies they're either just greedy or they just have this. It's like Tom said, it's kind of a boardroom decision where the ego of saying that we have our own, um, or it's maybe it's not even a company decision, but like they're uh, a subsidiary of another company that's wholly and completely not involved in gaming
Yeah.
and just wants some sort of market metric that they can put in the annual report that nobody's going to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll be honest. I mean, I think that's a remarkably good place to cut it for tonight. We're approaching an hour and a half. I mean, I'll go till 1 in the morning, but some shit to go out back and smoke a cigarette and get painted. But yeah, I believe this rounds out our debut trilogy, if you will. It took a little over a month and probably a little over 8 months for me to clean up all the editing or to edit everything and get it actually uploaded. But yeah, this was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Said figure out how to. Well, I'm excited to see how terrible my audio quality is and if I can actually separate.
You sound
tracks.
great right now. So.
Well, more so the recording and like if I can't
Sure.
separate out tracks, I played with my mic volume a good bit. But I mean, it was floating up to the like right now is among the lowest I've had it, and I'm still towards the middle of the green zone, so I think it'll be fine. And we'll go from there. But any hoomst. That's about it for tonight, everybody. I'm just going to cut the recording, and maybe we'll do our unrecorded premium after show that you guys can get access to via MP3 file for $500 a month. And
Love it.
like downloadable YouTube videos, you get cut off if you stop paying. So, yeah, but we'll examine monetization probably in a future episode. Have fun out there.